We've all seen the movies that start out with that roaring lion, but have you ever wondered what happened to him? He actually retired at the Philadelphia Zoo after his 15-year movie career. You might be surprised at all the interesting facts about the Philadelphia Zoo. Not only is it the first zoo in America, it is also said to be haunted. Before we learn about the Philadelphia Zoo, though, let's discuss the ideas of zoos. Zoos became a reality very early in time, possibly dating back to 2500 BCE. They were first seen in Egypt and Mesopotamia, and they were also first called menageries. They were a way for wealthy people to show their power. One of the earliest known zoos in the Western Hemisphere was owned by Montezuma, the Aztec ruler. He had animals like deer, birds, dogs, and many other more. The Europeans who first saw this zoo were unfamiliar with many of the animals that were native to Mexico, like crocodiles, so nobody's exactly sure what animals were there. Unfortunately, the zoo didn't last very long once the Europeans came, as Hernán Cortés destroyed it, much like everything else Montezuma owned. Zoos became a very popular idea in the 18th century, during what people call the Age of Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment is a period in European history when science and logic is what society and government portrayed as good. The science portion extended to zoology, and people became very interested in the ideas of zoos. Many people just had private zoos, but the first modern public zoo was in Paris, France in 1793, 81 years before the Philadelphia Zoo. The thoughts of zoos eventually came to America. The Philadelphia Zoological Society was established on March 21, 1859, with the purpose of raising money for a zoo to be opened. William Cammack, a local doctor, was elected the president of the Philadelphia Zoological Society. He was a praised physician, and he was actually quite famous at the time. He was also very involved in Philadelphia activities such as the Franklin Institute, the Union League, and the Academy of Arts. When William Cammack had taken a trip to Europe, he had been very impressed with their zoos, the London Zoo in particular. The Civil War began in 1860 and pushed the plans for the Philadelphia Zoo back 15 years. The Philadelphia Zoo instead opened on July 1, 1874. On the opening day, there was a big fanfare, with flags flying and a brass band. Over 3,000 people visited the first day. The zoo started out with 30 acres in Fairmount Park, but it later became 42 acres. Part of the zoo grounds was a house that was built by William Penn's grandson, John. John had built this house called the Solitude, but he moved to England after it was built, leaving it empty and on the zoo's grounds. The zoo used this towards their advantage, and the Solitude is still in use today at the zoo. The first animal that the zoo ever received was a raven, which they got in 1873, shortly before their opening. The Philadelphia Zoo also received some animals from the Smithsonian Institute, which were only lent to the zoo because the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. hadn't finished being constructed yet. The zoo originally had around 813 animals, which they mostly collected from Asia and Africa. The most notable of these animals was an Indian elephant. The Philadelphia Zoo was the place of many of the first captive animal births. The first successful births at the zoo were from a red deer and a white-tailed deer. In 1928, an orangutan was born, making it the first chimpanzee to be bred in captivity. In 1956, the zoo became home of the first captive-born cheetah in North America. And in 1983, the first captive-born echidna in North America found home in the Philadelphia Zoo. The Philadelphia Zoo, in my opinion, is one of the most caring zoos in the world. Since the beginning of the zoo's creation, they focused more on a scientific method to care for the animals. They were the first zoo in the world to have built a dedicated on-site animal care veterinary center, which is still in use today. In 1976, they moved away from the idea of collecting animals just for show, and instead focused on the conservation of the animals and the education of the people. This caused them to shrink from 3,000 animals to 1,300 animals. Zoo cakes were the first specially formulated food for zoo animals, and it cut their death rate by more than half. There's conflicting evidence on who invented zoo cakes, though. There are multiple sources saying it was a Dr. Ellen Corson White, and multiple sources saying it was a Dr. Herbert Radcliffe. After extensive research, I found in an old newspaper from 1981 they both actually contributed to the idea of zoo cakes. Without their invention of zoo cakes, many animals would be dead today. Things didn't always go well for the animals at the Philadelphia Zoo. Christmas Eve in 1995, there was a fire in the zoo, killing 23 primates, all of them endangered. Primates are essentially monkeys and humans, and any other previous ancestors of both species, like Neanderthals. Because of this terrible accident, there was a primate reserve built in 1999, which is still in use. The zoo has drastically changed over the years. At first, the zoo had 813 animals and over 228,000 visitors, which was half the population of Philadelphia at the time. Now the zoo has over 1,300 animals and approximately 1.35 million visitors. Many of those 1,300 animals are rare and endangered. Philadelphia Zoo has this really cool thing called Zoo 360. There is this network of trails in the sky throughout the zoo that the animals can walk through. If you've been to the zoo before, you've definitely seen these trails. They look like mesh, so you can easily see through them. Zoo 360 allows animals like tigers, lemurs, and monkeys, and many other more to roam around the zoo. These trails connect exhibits of animals with similar habitat needs, so they can share space and socialize. Zoo 360 is the first of its kind, not only in America, but in the world. The Philadelphia Zoo has many projects to preserve wildlife. They have something called the Unless Project. The Unless Project works towards saving the habitats of animals. It's called the Unless Project because unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is ever going to get better. A lot of what they do is making sure that people know the products they are using are products of deforestation. Deforestation is the destruction of trees to make land available or make products from the trees. About 18 million acres of trees are lost each year. Because of all these cut down trees, many animals are losing their habitats and their lives. The Philadelphia Zoo is trying to stop this. There are many ways you can get involved in the Unless Project, and if you're interested, check out the Philadelphia Zoo's website. Interesting things have happened to the Philadelphia Zoo over the years, but one particular thing is the zoo being haunted. Many staff members have reported seeing or hearing spirits in the zoo, and eventually a TV show called Ghost Hunters went to the Philadelphia Zoo. They said they found ghost activities in many of the Philadelphia Zoo buildings. One of the buildings said to be haunted is actually John Penn's house he built, the Solitude. If you aren't afraid of possible ghosts, there are many ways you can enjoy the Philadelphia Zoo. Not only can you just visit the zoo by yourself or with your school, you can also sleep overnight at the zoo. You might be wondering why some people would want to do that, but a lot of animals are more active in the evening time, so you would get to see them doing more. You also have opportunities to interact with some of the animals and talk to zookeepers and experts. The Philadelphia Zoo is very caring of their animals, and they've taken bigger steps than any other zoo to care for their animals and make them more comfortable. They focus on educating the people so they know how to help and preserve wildlife. Overall, the Philadelphia Zoo is a very caring zoo and a wonderful place to visit.